Hello again, folks, and welcome to another daily Bible reading guide as we journey through the New Testament together. Today we're in the chapter 3 of the book of James. What a challenge this is, taming the tongue. How easy a thing to say, how difficult a thing to do. Notice the short sentence at the beginning of verse 2 there. We all stumble in many ways. Have truer words ever been spoken? No one is perfect. We all do stumble. We trip up along the way. We do make mistakes. And we've got to accept that as Christians. We've got to allow for the fact that we're going to get things wrong. And that's when, of course, we must not let pride kick in and keep us from admitting our mistakes and accepting God's forgiveness and grace. But also then, there's a challenge to it. We've therefore got to work hard. We've got to strive to be better. Not because our salvation depends on it, no, but because this is what the Lord wants for his children. Christians ought to be disciplined when it comes to fighting sin, recognizing our weaknesses, striving to improve. And the area that James draws attention to in this chapter then is our words. James paints an amazing picture of the tongue, declaring that despite its small size, it can absolutely unleash the most devastating effects. The examples he gives of a huge boat being steered by a small rudder, or a powerful horse being directed by the small bit that's placed in its mouth, are just right on point. James is saying that we must be so careful when it comes to our words. Our words have power. Our words can affect our lives for better or for worse. They can determine the very course of our lives. I'm sure we can all remember times when our words have maybe hurt someone, or when our words have put us down a significant path, whether for good or for bad. But James is really saying here in this chapter, we need to be careful because more often than not, actually, the tongue can be destructive. He uses another great illustration here, referring to the immense damage that a single spark can make in a forest of trees. And you only have to think of the recent forest fires in Australia or California to just realize how serious that is. All started by single sparks, and it just becomes this world of a problem. And so it is with the tongue. Think of wars being started throughout history. Think of relationships being torn apart, marriages ending, careers that have been toppled, all because of badly chosen words or words of aggression. James says the tongue is capable of immense destruction. It can even corrupt the whole body and set us down a particular course for life. So we must tame it. That is to say, bring it under instruction of the Lord. And really what that means is we need to have our hearts under God's instruction. Jesus says in Matthew 12, the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. See, this is the key to having our tongues tamed. There's no tricks involved. There's no shortcuts here. It's about having hearts that are in line with the word and will of God. James says in verse 10 that it should not be the case that out of the same mouth comes praise for God and cursing against others. Our praise for the Lord comes from the heart. But if our hearts are full of bitterness and anger towards others, then how can it be full of genuine praise? It's not. It's just lip service. So we've got to hand over our hearts to the Lord, allowing the Spirit of God to sanctify us and guide us. This is the only key to taming the tongue. And James really mentions this in the final section of the chapter. It seems at first glance like he just changes topic altogether in verse 13 to talk generally about wisdom. But in actual fact, this flows from what he was just saying. The key to taming the tongue is found in the heart. Verse 14, he talks about getting rid of selfish ambition and bitter envy from our hearts. Really, he's saying this is heavenly wisdom. If our hearts are full of this kind of stuff, it leads to wickedness. But in fact, we ought to have hearts that are filled with the wonderful qualities that we read down in verse 17. And really, they're kind of similar in nature to the fruits of the Spirit we saw last week in the book of Galatians. That is the fruits of the Holy Spirit at work in our hearts, in our lives. Taming the tongue, therefore, is a spiritual battle. It's fought in the heart between our own sinful nature and the Holy Spirit of God. And whoever we allow to win that battle gets full control of our tongues and our words. Let's endeavour to allow the Spirit to be the one who triumphs. Until tomorrow then, God bless.